Would I be the a-hole if I left my family and their business? If this is going to be a long one. So I, 17F, don't have the best relationship with my parents, my father especially. They are from the USSR and my father is ex-military. Saying they are conservative is an understatement. Another important note, my family is pretty rich, upper middle class, maybe even lower upper class. This is going to be important later. Some background. When I was 16 I got my driver's permit and didn't ask or expect my parents to buy me a car. They bought me a new Toyota Prado, and don't get me wrong, I'm super thankful. They are currently paying for my university. They own a business and they gave me work in the family business with good pay. They pay for stuff like getting my hair and nails done, sometimes some clothes, and a phone/computer. They bought me some pretty expensive jewelry. I know all of this sounds like literal paradise, but honestly, sometimes my family feels a little like a dollhouse, perfect on the outside, a mess inside. First off, I know some people, including my parents when they were children, have it much worse than me, but my dad did order my mom to punish me with a phone charger cable about 7 times in my life since I was 8 up to the last time when I was 14, I think. Also, while they don't punish me like that anymore, whenever we have an argument my dad loses his patience easily and he shouts and says stuff like "let's go" before I live her to my mom right in front of me. And when he says that I get really scared. Also, whenever I'm talking to them it always feels like I'm being interrogated. Whatever I say can and will be used against me. Like whatever I say, they will interpret it in the worst way possible. And they also have this thing where they just always want me to be the leader in any situation. Like when I went to a theater club, every time I'd get home they would interrogate me about who I was friends with. If I'm the leader of the friend group? Why do I think so? Do I have any enemies in the class? And unless I give perfect or correct answers to the questions they get mad at me. So I just tell them what they want to hear. And my dad always takes credit for my achievements. For example, when I graduated high school at 16 with a 4.0 GPA and we went to a restaurant to celebrate, he said we graduated high school and that it wasn't my achievement for graduating early and instead it's my parents' achievement for raising me well. Another situation was that I applied to a few universities. And I got accepted into all of them, including my first choice university. My parents, however, wanted me to study at my second choice university because it was in a conservative right-wing state. And I tried to convince them, but I ended up just giving up because I was afraid my dad might get angry at me for not listening to him. Now the actual situation, they rented me a separate apartment at 17. Again, I didn't ask them to. When I was 15 I wanted to go to university overseas after graduating high school. They didn't want me to move away at 16/17, so they offered me a deal. I could move out to a separate apartment in a building close by, but I would instead attend university online, as I did high school. So I accepted and moved out at 16. They rented me a small studio apartment. About 6 months later some financial troubles started and my parents' business started bringing in much less money than before. I offered for all of us to move back in together into our original bigger apartment so they wouldn't need to pay for my studio apartment anymore. They told me that wasn't necessary. Instead, they decided they wanted to rent 2 two-bedroom apartments, live in one, I live in the other, and they have our offices in my apartment. I didn't like this idea because I felt like my apartment wouldn't be mine anymore. So I offered to instead keep my studio apartment and search for a slightly bigger apartment for them, but still within the price range. At first, they agreed and even told me I didn't need to look for an apartment for them and that we could just organize our offices in the new apartment they had already chosen. Then the next day my mom told me they changed their mind and they still wanted the office to be in my new apartment. She didn't just leave it at that, she tried to convince me to agree to this willingly, not just because they said so. I in turn tried to show her my point of view. After a while of just this stalemate, I told her that I didn't agree with their decision but that I accepted it and that maybe I just needed some time to understand it better. We left it at that. The next day though my parents told me we needed to talk. They yelled at me about how ungrateful I was, how I never even invited them to my apartment. I did, they just didn't accept the invitation. How I was using them, how they gave me a job, etc. And they told me I was moving back in with them immediately. It honestly really hurt me because I truly was respectful to them and I honestly did appreciate everything they did for me and I couldn't understand what I did wrong to cause them to get so angry with me. About a month later, out of the blue, they changed their mind and without even mentioning the previous situation they told me they decided to rent the 2 two-bedroom apartment and have the office in mine as they planned originally. I agreed and didn't say anything. After a little while they offered to rent me a separate studio apartment again and have the office in their apartment, which is exactly what I offered originally. After this situation, I just got this feeling that my entire life depended on their mood. And that as long as I depended on them and their business, they would still hold power over me. And they want me to take over the family business after I finish university, but I just realized a few things. If I take over the business, I will always depend on what they made for me. I will always be indebted to them, and I feel that I will never be able to say no or resist them in any way. I simply don't want to continue their business. I have my dreams and hopes, and I want to open my clothing brand. I won't be able to do any of this because I will feel like I have to dedicate myself entirely to their business. Another slightly unrelated factor is that I've known I was bi since I was 14 and think I might be lesbian. My parents are quite homophobic, and when I tried to come out to them, my mom just said, "Oh, it's normal for girls to want to experiment, it'll pass once you're older." And they think I have to marry a man because a true marriage is between a man and a woman. Side note, they're not religious, just conservative. What's more, is that they started searching for a husband for me when I was 14, and they want me to marry a man who is at least 5 to 10 years older than me. And I know it won't even be my choice because they always say, "How are we going to find you a husband?" And the truth is, my dream is to marry a lovely and kind woman, not a man. And my parents would never accept that. So after all of this, I want to wait till I finish my bachelor's degree in about 3 years and leave. I want to move to Europe and start a new life. Now I know that my parents love me, especially my mom, and I know it would hurt them if I left because at one point they said that everything they did for their child. But at the same time, I don't want to live my life how they want me to. And they have enough money from their business to live comfortably for many more years, so I wouldn't be abandoning them entirely. Also, if I do decide to leave, I might have to do so without even saying goodbye properly and just run away in the middle of the night because I'm afraid my father would physically try to stop me. So AITA for wanting to leave my family and their business? P.S. If you feel I didn't explain the situations that happened well enough, tell me and I'll give more details.